In today's video, I'm speaking with Tariq Ahmed. Tariq is a freelance presenter, host and reporter, and is currently a host on the Islam Channel, a UK-based free-to-air English-language Islamic-focused satellite television channel and online media platform founded in 2004. He's worked at some iconic sporting events and has interviewed the likes of Samir Nasri and Martin Tyler, and has even been featured in a viral BBC article where he said when asked about watching the King's coronation, "I'd rather have a lie-in and eat some donuts." A mutual friend Charlie put us in touch after I announced on LinkedIn that I just launched this YouTube channel, and after a 1-hour call on our lunch breaks, where Tariq was dropping so many wisdom bombs, I was like, I've got to record our next conversation and spread this knowledge, which is exactly what we're about to do on this video. Rather than just share the whole conversation though, I've clipped the best bits that are most helpful if you're considering a career in media. And I'm going to sift out the gold to highlight the most important points and action steps you can take. Tariq was really generous with his time and knowledge, and he's a barrel of laughs, so I'm sure you're going to really enjoy this conversation. Before we get there though, by way of quick introduction, my name's Scott and I'm a digital marketer by day and football commentator by night. On this channel, I'm sharing everything I'm doing on evenings and weekends to make it as a full-time football commentator. And my dream in the next 10 years is to make a living as a full-time Premier League football commentator. If this sounds like something you're interested in, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Alright, so the first question I asked Tariq was, what was your very first break in the media industry and how did you land that opportunity? Here's what he had to say.
Very first break in the industry. Well, I mean, it was so weird. So what happened was, this was in 2023, early 2023, and I was on my placement year at Clout working as a marketing exec, and I was absolutely loving it. And I was posting a lot on LinkedIn. And I was posting a lot of sports content on LinkedIn because I wanted to work in sports. I want to become a sports broadcaster. And so I was posting a lot of content on LinkedIn, a lot of videos talking about what was happening on the weekend in sports, any sports news, that sort of stuff. And I still remember someone from Sky connected with me, and this was the first time someone from Sky had connected with me, and he was a data graduate lead, so nothing to do with like presenting or anything like that. But I messaged him and I said, "Oh look, like I'm going to be going into my final year of uni in September, like, and then I'll be applying for jobs. Do you have any advice for applying for anything at Sky? Because I'd love to work at Sky." And he said, "I'm not really sure how the presenting side of things works, or like how it works on that side. I mainly work in data, but actually I know someone who is a presenter, is a presenter at another broadcaster, a smaller broadcaster called Islam Channel, that they're on TV and they've been around for 26 years. So they're very prominent, like for Muslims. If you're a Muslim, you'll know who they are in the UK especially, but they broadcast all over the world. If you're not a Muslim, you probably won't know who they are. It's sort of a religious lifestyle type of channel. But anyway, yeah, so he put me in contact with her. I messaged her on LinkedIn. She then put me in contact with someone who was a head of HR at the company. She then put me in contact with the chief content officer at the company, and then I managed to get an interview. So it was sort of like a connection of a connection of a connection of a connection that I managed to sort of go into the office. So I went into the office, did an interview, and it was an unpaid internship. And he was like, "All right, you can come in on the weekends," because I was working Monday to Friday, full-time role, 9 to 5. I was like, "Look, I can't do Monday to Friday, but I could do like a weekend. I could do a Saturday." And the chief content officer said, "Yeah, all right, let's do it." And it was actually so weird. So during that interview, they were recording a show, and it was a game show, and one of the contestants hadn't come. So the chief content officer was like, "Well, we're looking for a contestant. Do you want to go on?" And I said, "Well, it was a job interview, so I'm not going to say no." So I said, "All right, yeah, why not?" So my job interview actually was me going on TV, which was mental. Yeah, it was a game show, and it was really fun. I mean, I lost. I was awful at the game. Like the other guy absolutely pummeled me, but after that, he was just like, "All right, if you want to do it, why not? Come in on Saturdays. Maybe you can do some shadowing. There's not as big of a team on the weekend, so you're not going to get as much out of it as you would on the weekday. But obviously, because I was working full time, it wasn't possible for me to do weekdays. So that's how I got my in. And so Monday to Friday, I was working full time, and then Saturdays I was going, and sometimes even Sundays, I was going in to basically do some shadowing, learning how producing works, and slowly but surely I was then doing a bit of presenting, so going on locations, going on shoots, and maybe doing a bit of presenting, maybe filming some stuff, really basic entry level stuff, but they gave me sort of responsibility to do it, and I was very grateful. And then after that, after probably a few shifts after I'd gone back home for the summer, then came back to uni, I contacted them again. I said, oh, look, I'm back down south, but this time, because I'm not working full time, I can like maybe do a weekday shift. And they said, all right, yeah. So I was doing maybe one Wednesday every other week because I was balancing my work and balancing my uni work and stuff. And then they really liked what they saw. They saw that I was quite proactive and that I was sort of confident in what I was doing. So they offered me a freelance role. I did that freelance role for the rest of uni, where I was working once a weekend, where I was producing, presenting. I got to present live on TV at one point because the presenter was stuck in traffic, and the producer looked at me and said, well, you want to be a presenter, go present. And it was live TV, wasn't given a teleprompter or anything, and I did a good job. And they thought I did a good job as well. So, and then once my degree finished, they said, "Oh, when can you start?" And I've been there probably around 12 months now. So, the break came, I guess, from just doing some social media posts about sports and connecting with that guy who was a data graduate leader at Sky.
Something I really admire about Tarek, and a common theme you'll see throughout this whole video, is how he gets himself in the room, so to speak, both literally and metaphorically. His break with the Islam channel really epitomizes this. He was posting stuff on LinkedIn whilst working at Clout. He connects with someone at Sky who puts him in touch with someone else at Sky, and before you know it, he's a contestant on a game show, which is pretty wild, really. And as we'll see, he put in the hours and developed the skills so that when he was in the right room at the right time and he was called upon, he was ready to step up. This is a big part of what goes into the media game, networking with the right people and creating opportunities for yourself. More on this shortly. Okay, on to the next lesson.
I love that so much. When it comes to like your skill set and things, did you what sort of skills were you building prior to actually doing that presenting role? Was there any things that you've done beforehand that kind of set you up for that, or was it kind of very much just like learning on the fly, winging it a little bit? How did you prepare that?
I mean, I realized I wanted to become a presenter, broadcaster, reporter, whatever you want to call it, in my first year of uni, where it was during COVID, it was 2020, and we sort of had to do all the sort of boring sides of uni and do all the academic side of things. We couldn't do any of the fun stuff. Like I couldn't meet new people. You couldn't really join societies or anything like that. So, and at the time, I wanted to go into the civil service. I studied history and international relations. I was like, yeah, I want to go into civil service, but then I was like, nah. I was just bored. I was like, I can't be like because I couldn't do any of the fun stuff. The work itself wasn't exciting me either. Like I've always loved history and I still do, but because I couldn't do any of the fun stuff out of it, I was like, I don't even want to do any of the academic stuff. So then I started a sort of solo podcast. Well, actually, I just recorded a video on my phone, uploaded it onto Snapchat, and it was like it was like 15, like, which is crazy, 15-minute, especially at that time, 15-minute videos on your Snap stories was mental. And it was just basically me just talking about like how I felt and ranting away about sort of the situation and being worried about, is it going to get better, is it going to get worse, blah blah blah. And a lot of people replied back, and I said, and sort of in support said, oh, like, I feel the same way, like this was really interesting to listen to, someone's actually saying what I think as well. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, why not start a podcast? I mean, why not upload it onto YouTube? Because it would have been easier, because on Snapchat it was like you could only record for 60 seconds, so I had to constantly re-record. Whereas on YouTube I could just start filming myself. So I was in my uni kitchen, no one else was in the room, no one else was in everyone had gone away for Christmas. I was like, okay, I'm just going to start recording a podcast. And I did a few of those episodes, absolutely loved it. Then realized I could get guests over Zoom from all over the world. So that's what I did, and I interviewed someone who just come out of prison after 26 years, someone who defended serial killers for a living, someone who negotiated with pirates, people who were actors and actresses, and so the guy, one of the co-hosts of the Happy Hour podcast, Robbie Knox, Ethan Lawrence, who was in Bad Education. These really, pretty high profile people, or somewhat high profile people, I guess. Someone who played for United, which is the football team that I support. He had the fourth most amount of clean sheets at United, a guy called Gary Bailey, and like just all these fascinating people, and I absolutely loved it. And I was like, what can I do that will help me do this more? And I was like, oh yeah, being a reporter, being a journalist, being a presenter. And so ever since then, I've sort of made it my goal to get closer and closer to that. And before this opportunity at Islam Channel, I was doing little bits of presenting on social media, so maybe presenting some sports news, maybe presenting some other type of news, just to get myself more confident in front of camera, to become a better presenter, essentially. Also doing the podcast as well, which helped my interviewing skills. I was also at a radio station. I got my first radio gig on B Radio, which is a community radio station, so I was presenting there. And then I was also on the side just recording myself. So I would go on Google and type in free teleprompter, put in like a news article or something like that, and practice using a teleprompter, because I knew if I wanted to work in TV one day, if I wanted to work on sort of the mainstream projects, I'd probably need to know how to read a teleprompter. So I did some practicing on that. And in my placement year, I was encouraged by my boss, who's Amelia Sordell, the founder of Clout. She told me, "Oh, you should stop like vlogging, because if you want to be a presenter, you need to be presenting, and you're not presenting." I was like, "Okay, yeah, that's a fair point." So I started vlogging my weeks, and I absolutely loved that. Learned how to edit videos to an entry level extent. I was learning how to edit. I was learning how to present. I was more confident, like sort of like now. If you tell me to go outside and film, I would just whack my phone out and start filming. Right? I do not care, because I became so accustomed to it all. So all these little skills that I was sort of building up will basically help me get to the point where I could stand out when I was doing my internship, because it was like, oh, hang on a second, okay, so this guy hasn't studied film or media or anything, but he knows all about these little things, and it's because I was doing all these things on the side. I was doing all these things whilst I was in my placement year, whilst I was at uni in my first and second year, because I knew what I wanted to do, or what I wanted to pursue. So even without a media degree or a film degree or a production degree, like I was able to stand out in those rooms and during those unpaid internships and get a paid role off the back of it, because I had already done bits and bobs. So like, for example, that opportunity that I had presenting live on TV, if I'd never really presented, or if I hadn't presented as much as I had done previously, and if I hadn't done street interviews, and if I hadn't presented on social media, and if I hadn't done all of that, then when I did present live on TV, I might have messed up loads, and they might have gone, yeah, this guy is a million miles away from being a presenter on TV. They might have never given me another opportunity. But because I built those skills and I had an entry level sort of foundation, they gave me further opportunities, and I so I got a longer term role there.
So something here I want to double down on. It's this idea that you can learn lots of different skills during what you might call extracurricular activities. So in Tarek's case, this includes interviewing people for his podcast, interviewing people on the street, learning how to read from a teleprompter, and learning how to edit videos through his weekly vlogs, to name just a few. As a result, even though his degree is in international relations and history, which isn't exactly relevant to presenting, he's still been able to land presenting jobs. Why? Because he's been proactive in developing skills outside of office hours. I've done a similar thing over the years with similar results. At the moment, I'm developing my video editing skills and storytelling skills, both for long and short form content, through the vehicle of social media. And in the past, I too had a podcast where I recorded over 150 episodes over a 2 to 3 year period, which taught me about quickly developing rapport with people, how to edit audio, connecting with people online, and so much more. And in between this, I've published over 300 articles on medium.com, which helped me develop my writing skills, and spent 2 years as a self-employed writer, working with clients all over the world. Like Tarek, I could go on, but you get the idea. Don't wait to develop your skills. Take action now.
I love that, man. When it comes to mistakes, have you made any, not just in terms of presenting, but maybe in terms of even that outreach? Because you seem to have done an awful lot with it, what with the podcast, and then, obviously getting to on the Islam channel. Like, are there any things that spring to mind, or any maybe not mistakes, but things you think, oh, I wish I hadn't done it that way. I wish I'd done something else, instead. Anything, springs to mind for you?
I look at my uni sort of years, and I'm happy because I basically prioritized my work outside of uni than uni itself, because I knew if I wanted to get to where I want to get to, my history and international relations degree is going to get me there. Like a first would be nice, and I actually did manage to get a first, but I was like, it's a piece of paper. Like, it's not going to get me to where I want to get to. I need to be doing all this other stuff outside of uni. So I don't have any regrets about that. What I do wish is that maybe if I wish I worked closely with maybe a local football club during my time there, because just getting that experience side of things, of working maybe on their social media or doing stuff with them, I wish I did that a little bit more, just because the world is changing, especially media is changing. Everything is now digital. Obviously I got loads of experience on TV, and that experience is going to help me massively, and I'm still working there and I love working there and it's great, but getting more digital experience, I wish I prioritize that a little bit more, and I did prioritize it. There was a lot. I was creating a lot of content in my final year of uni. You know, I got to interview people like Samir Nasri and Martin Tyler and these big names, and create social media content off the back of that, and that was great. But it would have been cool to have created content for a football club or a sports club, just to learn how that operates, how that works, because everything is now digital media. So looking back, I wish I did maybe a little bit more of that. But also, I was working non-stop in my final year of uni. It was jammed. Like, if you ask my flatmates in that final year, man, I was starting early, finishing late, then also doing my dissertation, you know, on the train and whatever. So it was just like, yeah, it was. I mean, the first, I think the first 2,000 words of my dissertation were all done on the Great Western Railway train from Paddington to Reading. Like, I got that train so many times. That journey I made, God knows how many times, from Reading to Paddington to Reading, and then from Paddington. I mean, I knew, now I'm so confident using tubes and whatever, and getting the tube line and whatever. Like, I was going from Reading to Paddington a bajillion times because everything was in central London, or everything was in London. So, I mean, I was jammed. So I don't know how I would have fit time to actually have done that. But looking back, I wish I had done maybe that a little bit more. But overall, like, look, I mean, like, I'm glad that what I did was I prioritized what I felt was need to be prioritized, and I was called in because I wasn't going to my lectures. I was called in by like the academic whatever staff at the uni, and they were like, you know, why are you not going to your lectures? And I explained them the whole situation, and I said to them, I said, I guarantee you've never had someone answer all your questions like this before, because I'm not going to these lectures because I hate them or I'm bored or I'm being lazy. I'm going to them because there's other opportunities that are better for me in my career than this. And every question that they had, I had an answer to. They were like, but surely, like, you want a first. And I was like, what is the difference between a first and a 2-1 in terms of career? And they didn't really have an answer. It was like, just for your own personal integrity. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I mean, if you look at my results, I'm getting first and 2-1s in all of them, so I'm not doing that bad. And they were like, yeah, okay, fair enough. And then they were like, oh, well, what about any like group projects? If you're missing out lectures, you end up missing out on, you won't be able to contribute as much on group projects. And I said, well, actually, any group projects that were there, what I did was I would pick the topic that no other person wanted to do, so that I wouldn't work with anyone else. So for example, there would be a list of topics, and because I knew I wouldn't be able to work with, I was working at random times of the day. I was working at 3 a.m. I was working on the train. Like, I wouldn't be able to meet in the library with a group of people. It just wasn't possible at the time. So I remember a lot of the times the seminar leader would give out a piece of paper, and they'd have a load of lit topics. And usually I would sit at the front because I liked sitting at the front. I felt more engaged. But I wouldn't tick which topic I wanted to do. I would first pass it along to everyone else. Let everyone else tick what topics, and then everyone who picked the same topic, they'd work together on one. I would go and find the one that no one wanted to do, and I'd be like, I'm going to do that one, because then I wouldn't have to work with anyone else, because I knew I wouldn't be able to. And I told him this, and he was like, oh wow, okay. Okay, fair enough, you really thought. And then it was like, oh, well, what about your exams? Like, how are you going to do it? And I was like, I purposely, in last year, before I picked my modules, I went through every single one of them and crossed off all the ones that had exams, because I was like, I'm not doing exams. And he was like, you've not got any exams? I was like, nope, because I made sure I didn't pick any modules with exams in. And I said to him, look, my priority this year was not to do the best I can in my degree and enjoy my degree. It was to go and do all this other work on the side. I'm literally just getting this piece of paper because I'm in my final year now. I don't like, I have to finish things that I've started. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy the topics I studied. You know, it was history and it was politics. I enjoyed both those topics. But it was a case of, I just need to get this done, over and done with, and do my best and hand it in, and I ended up getting a first off the back of it. So literally, I'm not that like I'm not that smart, but because I was being like in terms of academia, like in school I was okay. I mean, my A levels I got 3 Bs, and I'm happy with what I got. But I wasn't like I wasn't those that are like naturally smart. I had to revise loads. I had to study loads to get any good grade. So the fact that I honestly look back and I still don't know how I managed to do it. I think the help of ChatGPT was massive. AI, basically, my degree certificate should have Tariq Ahmed and man, AI came in clutch. In that final year of uni, AI was so helpful. Like
this whole exchange is fascinating to me, but not for the reasons you might expect. The bit I really want to put a pin in is what Tariq did with respect to his degree. He realised the extra effort of chasing a first versus getting a 2-1 is minimal, and for the record, I 100% agree with this, given my experience. My first employer didn't even ask for my certificate, so he did everything he could to be smart with his time and plough it into the extracurricular activities mentioned before. So things like writing the first 2,000 words of his dissertation on trains between Paddington and Reading, deliberately picking topics that no one else wanted to do, so he didn't have to work with anyone on group projects, and picking modules that didn't have exams so that you didn't have to revise for them. Now, I'm not saying you should do any of this if you're a student, or that you should be writing your dissertation on Great Western Railway train, but it just goes to show that there are ways to be smart with your time if it's tight. For me personally, as someone who works a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, this means I have to make certain sacrifices if I want to cram everything in. To give you a sense of my typical day, I wake up around 5:15 and spend an hour at the gym, buy groceries on the walk home, saving me time at the weekend, eat breakfast, shower, meditate, and respond to voice notes, and do up to an hour of freelancing before starting work at 9. After a few hours of work, I eat lunch and go for a walk on my lunch breaks while listening to podcasts. Finish work at 5 and immediately start doing YouTube stuff, scripting videos, recording content, editing content, making thumbnails, etc. Have dinner and go to a game if it's on a Tuesday night. I go to bed by 10 p.m. and then do it all over again. And on weekends, I try to make time to see my girlfriend, family, and friends, but whenever I can, I'm working on commentary stuff, whether that's actually commentating on a match day or helping out at Harrogate Town as their match day reporting, or just simply posting on Twitter. So yeah, there's a lot of sacrifice involved, but I absolutely love what I do outside of work and would happily do more of it.
Then in my second year, it was applying for placement years. So I knew I wanted to do a placement year, and placements are very competitive. So that whole year I applied. I was still doing the podcast as well, probably doing the podcast this year, probably once every 2 weeks now rather than once every week. Applied loads, and actually it was this was when I started like enjoying LinkedIn. So I was posting a lot on LinkedIn, and then I came across a company called Clout, and I absolutely loved the entire team. I thought they were great. Like I commented on all their posts, and the reason why is because I sort of used the skill that I'd learned from getting guests on podcasts. So the way I got these sort of high profile guests was by you have to give them something before you sort of ask. I firmly believe that. So if you just approach them and go, "Can you come on my podcast?" They're gonna be like, "No, I'm not. Why would I?" But if you're regularly replying to their stories, commenting on their posts and whatever, like they'll be like, "Oh, do you know what? I'll come to mind when they see my name and they see a DM. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, I recognize that name," and then they're way more likely to go, "Okay, yeah, I'll agree to do this guy's podcast." So that's what I was doing. This is how I was getting guests. And so I saw Clout and I was like, I love this company. I thought this company was brilliant. I thought the team was great. I was fascinated by the founder, Amelia. So I was like, I need to get Amelia on my podcast. So that's what I started doing. I started following Amelia on Instagram and on LinkedIn, commenting on her posts, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, like as in, I really liked sort of her message and the way she was running her business and what she was prioritizing and the growth. It was all insane. I really wanted to get her. And whilst I was sort of, and it's also a form of research, right? Because in my head, I'm like, I know I'm going to get this person on my podcast. So me following them for long periods of time is going to help me with my research and it's going to help make a better podcast episode when she does agree, or when I finally ask and she does agree. So I did that for a number of months, and then I became fairly known. I started growing a lot on LinkedIn. I was talking about donuts on LinkedIn. I was becoming a little bit more well known amongst sort of this sort of initial LinkedIn community back in 2023, and then I finally asked Amelia to come on the podcast. She agreed. She was like, yeah, let's do it. Because we DM'd a few times on Instagram before on whatever. So then we finally did the podcast episode. And this was a week before I started my placement at Unilever as a global marketing exec. And that was pretty much I'd say that was number 2 in terms of the placement years I wanted to get, like the placement opportunity I wanted to get. Like I was so happy. This is the one that I wanted, because there isn't really any placement years in TV or anything. That just doesn't exist. So the careers advisor at uni told me, try marketing and comms. That's probably your best way. And I was like, okay, that sounds fine. So I ended up getting that. It was a week before, and then a week before I had Amelia's podcast that I was recording. And whilst I was recording the podcast, we had a great chat. I did loads of research. I asked questions that sort of I'd listened to pretty much every podcast that she'd done previously. To do as much research as possible, just so that I wouldn't ask the same questions. And it was a great conversation. And afterwards, she was like, "Oh, so Tariq, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I've just finished my second year of uni. I'm going to go on placement year for a year, and then I'm going to go back to final year of uni." And she was like, "Oh, well, rather than going to Unilever, why don't you come work for me?" And I was quite surprised. I was like, "Wow, okay." And the thing is, whilst I was researching that, in my head, I was like, I need to work for this woman. I need to work at this company for this woman, and I'll do that in my final year, or I'll do that part-time in my final year, or I'll do it after I graduate. Something. I knew I wanted to work. Even though I knew I wanted to go into presenting and TV, I was like, this is the sort of company. I just had that feeling that this is the sort of company that I could thrive at and really learn something that would be beneficial to me. I don't know why, like sort of what I thought I could get out of it, but I knew there was something that I could get out of it, and I knew I wanted to be part of the company. So she offered me that, and I was like, oh, let me think about it. But I didn't really think about it. It was just a case of, there's no way. Like, why would I leave? Why would I go to a startup that was less than 2 years old, that could flop at any time, when I had this opportunity to go to Unilever, one of the biggest companies in the world, one of the most competitive marketing internships to get at the time? You know, the second highest one that I wanted to get. If you were to ask me what was my dream internships that I wanted to get on placement, that would have been up there. So it's like, there's no way I'm going to go to this startup. And I even asked a few people, and they were like, don't be stupid, Terry. Like, why would you go to a startup? Like, they could just collapse any day now. You just, like, what are you going to do then? I was like, yeah. So I said, I emailed back and I said, look, really appreciate it. Like, unfortunately, like, I am going to be joining Unilever. The other reason was it was a week before it starts. And I felt, I'd met my manager at that point. I felt really, I couldn't, do... I didn't want to get blacklisted or anything like that. I was like, I can't do the company over. I didn't want to do the person over. So I'd already agreed, and I'm a person of my word. And I said this to Amelia on email, and she said, yeah, that's fine. Let's stay in touch. We stayed in touch. We carried on DMing on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. But then the minute I went into Unilever, I knew I'd made the wrong decision. I was like, yeah, I've done something. I shouldn't have done that. I knew I'd made the stupid decision. Those 2 months I was at Unilever, mate, I was so drained, and like I'm a very optimistic, energetic person, and also at the same time I was trying to find a place to live, and I couldn't find a place to live, so I was commuting 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hours back. So, and it was like the first week as well, and I was tired. I was falling asleep during meetings, like it just wasn't good. And because I was stressed about, I've made the wrong decision, like what am I going to do? How am I going to do another night? Another year here, like blah 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 blah, and so, and there was one guy that I even spoke about it. His name was Rico, because it felt I couldn't really speak about it with anyone, because it was like, you've got 2 job offers, like, who are you to complain? Do you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
But it was genuinely like, it was the first time in my life where something hadn't been dictated to me almost. Like, obviously, whilst you're growing up, it's like you go through school years, you go through uni years, and then after uni, you have those decisions that you have to make. Whereas for me, it was like, now, I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, how, do I message Amelia asking if the job's still available? What if she thinks I'm a bit of a knob? Like, what's going to happen there? So I was pondering about it for like 2 months or something, and I remember I recorded a video on my phone where I was just looking at the camera and I was like, I don't know what to do, man. Like, I clearly don't like this job. I clearly feel like I made the wrong decision, but I've watched that video back, and my eyes are so bloodshot, like they're so red, because I clearly was so anxious about this decision. And I spoke to a few people, and they were telling me like, nah, don't be stupid, just push through it. Like, don't join a startup. Like, it will just be a stupid decision. Like, what if they collapse? Blah 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 blah. But I was like, nah, man, I just feel like this is the right decision. And also, I just like the idea of doing things for the plot. So it's like, yeah, but it'd be fun to do it. Like, imagine I'm leaving this massive company to join some small company that's less than 2 years old. We'll just see what happens. Yeah, do it for the content, do it for the plot. So I messaged Amelia and I said, look, I'd love to know if there's the opportunity is still there. She was like, okay, let me speak to my head of ops, and she'll give you a ring. She gave me a ring. Everything seemed good. Then I had an interview with Amelia and with the head of ops at the time, and they offered me a job, and I was like, right, I'll start 5th of September. I still remember Monday, 5th of September was my first day, and like immediately I felt a relief. But it ended up being the best decision ever, man. Like the being and now I advocate joining startups. Like if you're a graduate, like, or if you're at uni or whatever it is, go join a startup, man, because joining Clout and being part of that team, and that team especially, was like everything that I needed at the time. Like I look back on it and I go, that was exactly what I needed. And I recently finished watching the American version of The Office, and there's a line that I think it was Dwight, or I think it was the other one, I can't remember. One of them said where you don't ever realize you're in the good times until the good times are gone or something. And I was like, that was really the good times for me. That was so perfect for me. Like the people that I was around, the skills that I learned, the company that Clout was at the time, like it was exactly what I needed, even though it was nothing to do with presenting. I mean, I was doing a bit of presenting with street interviews, but it really built my foundation, and it taught me about social media, which is so important in this day and age, and even in presenting as well. And yeah, I mean, that was the biggest thing that I did, and that's up there with like the top 3 decisions I've ever made was joining Clout, like without a shadow of a doubt. And I still speak to people who work there. I still speak to Amelia regularly. Like it was such a brilliant decision. But yeah, then I went to final year of uni, joined a program called BComs, which if you want to get into sports media or anything like that, BComs is absolutely brilliant. That's how I got opportunities to interview like Sammy Nasri and go to football games and interview Martin Tyler and interview Odell Beckham Jr., be at a press conference and ask him a question, and all these other opportunities. UCI Track Champions League final, create content there. Like all these opportunities came off the back of through BComs in that final year of uni. So and that was another brilliant decision to join the BComs the program, and I highly recommend it. BCOMS if anyone wants to work in media or sports media. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. That's how I got my opportunities in my final year, and those were the opportunities I was prioritizing over my uni degree, and it was definitely worth it. And also at the same time, I was also working part-time at Islam Channel.
All right, a couple of things I want to dig into here. The first is Tarek's outreach method, which he used to get high-profile guests for his podcast, including Amelia, who would go on to become his boss. It's a similar method to the one I use to get people I admire onto my podcast as well. All you really have to do is be genuinely interested in what someone is doing over a period of months. This means regularly replying to stories, commenting on social media posts, maybe even writing articles about them like I've done before. And if you do this enough, there's a good chance you'll strike up a natural conversation. Then, if you feel inclined to do so, you can make an ask. Someone wise once said, in order to be interesting, you first must be interested. And in the world of media, being interested first is crucial, because not too dissimilar to other creative industries, media is as much about who you know as much about what you know. The second thing is a mindset shift. Rather than worrying about potential failures and outcomes, tell yourself, do it for the plot. Experience something terrible? You can turn this into great content. Worried you've made the wrong choice? Document it in real time. For Tarek, this framing reduced his downside when he quit Unilever to work with a startup, despite what his friends and family were pleading him to do. And as he says, the decision turns out to be one of the best he's ever made.
In terms of, I mean, you kind of touched on it already, really, with like working at a startup and all your opportunities that have kind of come from that. Are there any other bits of advice, I guess, you give to people who may be starting out in presenting or wanting to maybe get into media, comms, all that good stuff?
I think if you want to do presenting or you want to work in media or anything like that, then you have to do it before you get the opportunity to do it. Like, don't wait for the job, just start doing it. Like, we're at a time where we've got one of these, everyone's got one of these, everyone's got a phone, you can easily record content, you can buy a mic for like £30 on Amazon, or even cheaper, honestly, and you can just go out and create content, whether it's street interviews, whether it's you can do those street interviews for yourself, for your own account, or whether it's starting a podcast. And or whether it's starting a YouTube or whatever it is, presenting the news, and whether you upload it or not is up to you. I would recommend uploading it, but initially, if you don't want to upload it and you want to do practice runs, feel free. But like I always think, I think this is the case for literally anyone and everyone is start creating content, because it's not necessarily about going massive. Like, I'm not massive, I don't have any followers. Like, I've had a few videos that went viral, but I haven't created a community. I'm not massive on social media or anything like that, but I still continue to create content because it's about the right person seeing it. You don't need everyone in the world to see it. If you get the right person to see it, you will get those DMs, you will get those opportunities, you'll get people going, oh, you should try this, or have you seen this, or have you done that, or blah blah blah. And like I said, it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, when that sports post, I didn't even do that well on LinkedIn, ended up getting me a connection, which got me another connection, which got me another connection, which got me the job at Islam Channel. That, and it was because I was visible online. And so I always recommend anyone, whether you want to work in media or any other field, I always say is start creating content, because you'll get seen by the right people. You never know what could come off the back of it. These days brands give out free stuff. You get free stuff. Like, why would you not want free stuff? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much that you can get off the back of it. So I think it would be insane for you to not create some sort of content. It doesn't even have to be video. It can be a blog. It can be a vlog. It can be whatever you want. It can be 10-second snippets. It can be skits. It can be whatever. But what you can get out of it, in terms of the opportunities that can come out of it, but also the skills that you learn. Me doing the podcast made me realize what I want to do with my life. So if you're struggling with what you want to do with your life, like, start experimenting with things. I started the podcast, it made me realize that's what I want to do. But also, it helped me learn about social media, it helped me learn about editing videos, editing audio files, all this sort of stuff. I learned all of that because I started the podcast, and it gave me that solid foundation. So, like, I always think, that's like my piece of advice there is start creating, start building your brand, whether it's on LinkedIn or TikTok or Instagram. It doesn't have to be on every brand or every platform. It can only be on one platform if you want. It's all entirely up to you. But I always think by creating, you can get so much out of it. It's incredible how much you can get out of it. And the other advice I think you mentioned there is I'd say join a startup, man. Like, that internship, I know, regardless of where I get to in life, I will forever be grateful for Clout and for all the people that work there, because that startup was exactly what I needed and when I needed it. Like, it was the perfect point of what I needed when I needed it. The fact that it was in my placement year, it was everything that I needed, and it was absolutely brilliant. And I think other people could have that same experience at a startup. Don't get me wrong, it can get very busy and chaotic, and you do multiple job roles, but there's so much benefits of that. You learn so much about the business by joining a startup. So I'd say join a startup. Maybe not a startup that's in its first year, but maybe join a startup that's sort of in its second year or third year or beyond, because there's just so much you can learn and get off the back of it.
Yeah, mate, solid advice. Love that. And then final question, which I guess actually there might be some crossover here, but if people were to, I guess I'll make you blush a little bit, to try and like follow in your footsteps, kind of emulate your virality you've had, what you're doing in terms of working with Islam Channel, all this, amazing opportunities and work. Like, what would you recommend people do in specifically the first 6 months of, whether they're just creating content for the first time, or actually if they're still at university, or whatever their situation. The first 6 months, like, what would you recommend them doing?
That's a tough question. It depends what position you're in, but I always think one of the reasons why, like, I got better, I guess, at interviewing and figured out that I wanted to go into podcasting was because I made the decision that first year that I did the podcast, I was like, I'm going to upload one episode a week. That's going to be the goal. One episode a week. It's either going to be a solo episode, it's going to be an episode with a friend, or it's going to be an episode with a guest. But I'm going to upload one episode a week, and that was because it was all about maintaining that consistency. Because I knew the more I did it, the better I get. And I remember reading a stat early on that said something like what was it? It was something like, in order to get into the top 5% of podcasts in the world, you've just got to have more than 14 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, something crazy like that. And I was like, right, okay. So all I need to do is get 14 episodes or whatever it was. And it was like maintaining that consistency. So I always think if you're starting out, you need to make a decision. Like, what is your going to be your I guess, how consistent are you going to be? And you've got to be realistic with it. Like, if you're working a full-time job and you're going to the gym and you're doing other stuff on the side, you ain't posting every day a week. Unless, I mean, it might, if it's easier to do, maybe you will post every day of the week. But if it's sort of, you have to edit and you have to film and you have to script and you have to do this and that, you're not going to do that. So you have to make something that's realistic. So I try and post, at least like once a week. So I'll post once a week on LinkedIn, and I try and post once a week in terms of video content out on socials as well, whether it's a standalone video, whether it's a bit of a highlight thing or whatever it is, just some piece of content that I'll edit and I'll put out there. Just to make sure that you're being consistent with it, because the more consistent you are, the better you'll get, the more likely, and like I said, it's about the right person seeing you. The more you post, the more consistent you post, the more likely the right person is going to see you. It's not the more likely more people are going to see you, but it's the more likely that the right person will see you. So I always think that's always a good start of being like, how often am I going to do what I want to do? And also being like, well, what do I want to get out of it? I guess the thing that I did, and I didn't do it consciously, was I worked backwards. I was like, okay, I want to be a presenter, so what do I need? Okay, I need the right skills. If the opportunity ever came, I need to be able to do it on the spot. I need to be able to read a teleprompter. I need to be able to create social media content. I need to be able to edit. I need to be doing all these things. I need to learn how to do all these things. So yeah, I guess the other point is if you do know what your end goal is, or I don't like saying end goal actually. I always think long-term goal. If you know what your long-term goal is, work your way backwards from that, and then you'll be able to find out what you need to be doing in the first 6 months. But if in terms of creating content, I'd say find a schedule that works for you: once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever it is, once a month, twice a month, whatever works for you. You need to find that and just be consistent in it.
Tarek drops so much gold in this last bit. Number 1, just start creating content, whether it's street interviews, a podcast, a YouTube channel, presenting the news, skits, whatever. You'll develop your skills, you might get clarity on what you want to do as a career, and opportunities may open up as a result. Number 2, creating content isn't about getting lots of followers. It's about being seen by the right people. And number 3, choose a consistent content creation schedule. Tarek tries to post at least 1 video a week across his social media. I do the same. In fact, I have a whiteboard where I track my daily and weekly goals, which massively helps. So which piece of advice are you most excited to try? Let me know in the comments, and I'm sure Tarek would love to hear too. And if you want to connect with Tarek, you can find links to his socials in the video description. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.